The morning sun filtered through the oak trees as Michael stepped onto his front porch, coffee mug in hand. 3 months in Oak Ridge Estates, and he still couldn't believe they'd managed to find such a perfect spot. The neighborhood sat on the outskirts of town, close enough for an easy commute but far enough to escape the noise and crowds. Kids rode bikes on the sidewalks while neighbors waved to each other across perfectly trimmed lawns. After 15 years as a Marine with 2 combat tours that had left him with both visible and invisible scars, this peaceful place felt like the reward he'd been waiting for. His wife Lily appeared beside him, her hair pulled back in a messy bun. "The kids are actually eating breakfast without arguing," she said, leaning against his shoulder. "Must be some kind of miracle." Michael smiled, wrapping an arm around her waist. "Maybe we should play the lottery today." Their 2 children, 10-year-old Ben and 8-year-old Katie, had adapted to the move better than expected. New school, new friends, new home. They'd taken it all in stride. The move had been hardest on Lily, leaving behind her job and the support network they'd built on base, but even she had started to make connections with other parents at the school. "Dad, come look at the fort we made in the backyard," Ben called from inside the house. "Judy calls," Michael said, kissing Lily's forehead before heading back inside. The backyard fort, constructed from old moving boxes and blankets, wasn't exactly architecturally sound, but the pride on his children's faces made Michael's heart swell. This was why he'd left the service. Moments like these, watching his kids grow up in a safe place, being present for the small triumphs of everyday life. Later that afternoon, while Michael was helping Ben with his science project, the doorbell rang. Lily answered it and returned with a white envelope, her expression puzzled. "It's from the HOA," she said, handing it to him. Michael opened the envelope and pulled out an official-looking letter. "Are you kidding me?" he muttered as he read. "What is it?" Lily asked. "A violation notice. Apparently, our grass is half an inch too tall." He shook his head in disbelief. "They measured it." Lily peered over his shoulder at the letter. "There's a fine if we don't fix it within 48 hours. Michael sighed, running a hand through his short-cropped hair. "Guess I know what I'm doing tomorrow." The next morning, Michael was out early with their recently purchased lawnmower. As he pushed it across the yard, he noticed a man standing at the edge of the property, watching him with arms crossed. The man was in his 60s, with steel-gray hair and the rigid posture of someone used to getting his way. "You must be the new family," the man said, not bothering to introduce himself. "I'm the president of the Homeowners Association." "Michael Reynolds," he replied, extending his hand. The man, who eventually introduced himself as Thomas Fleming, barely touched Michael's hand before launching into a detailed explanation of the HOA rules, pointing out several other issues with their property that needed immediate attention. The mailbox should be hunter green, not forest green. The children's toys need to be stored out of sight when not in use. And those flower beds your wife planted, they need to be approved by the landscaping committee. Michael kept his expression neutral, years of military discipline helping him maintain his composure. "We'll take care of it," he said simply. As Fleming walked away, Michael couldn't shake the uneasy feeling settling in his stomach. Something about the man's tone, the underlying hostility poorly disguised as neighborly concern, triggered his instincts. In combat zones, Michael had learned to identify potential threats before they escalated. He'd gotten good at reading people, situations, environments. That night, after the kids were asleep, Michael showed Lily the list of violations Fleming had recited. "It seems excessive," Lily said, frowning at the notebook where Michael had written everything down. "The Paddles next door have the same mailbox color as us." "I noticed that too," Michael said. "And the Hendersons across the street have toys all over their front yard. So why are we being singled out?" Michael shrugged. "Not sure yet. But I think we should start keeping records of all our interactions with the HOA, just in case." "In case of what?" Lily asked, concern shadowing her eyes. "Probably nothing," Michael reassured her, though his gut told him otherwise. "But 15 years in the Marines taught me to always be prepared." He couldn't have known then how crucial that preparation would become, or that his military training would soon be put to use in ways he never imagined in this seemingly perfect neighborhood. Over the next few weeks, the bright yellow envelopes from the HOA kept coming, each one more ridiculous than the last. Michael fixed every issue promptly, but new violations appeared like clockwork. His trash cans were visible from the street for 15 minutes too long. The wind chime on their back porch wasn't on the approved list. The children's chalk drawings on their own driveway were unsightly decorations. "This is getting out of hand," Lally said one evening, dropping yet another envelope on the kitchen counter. 3 notices this week alone. Michael nodded, his jaw tight. "I know. I ran into the Patels yesterday. They've lived here for 5 years and said they've never gotten a single violation notice." Lily raised her eyebrows. "Not one? Ever?" "Nope, and Mrs. Chen down the block told me the same thing." Michael pulled out his phone and showed Lily a spreadsheet he'd been building. "I've been asking around. So far I've talked to 12 families. Only 4 have received violation notices in the past year, and all 4 moved in within the last 6 months. You think Fleming is targeting newcomers?" "Not all newcomers, just some of us." Michael pointed to one name on his list. "The Watsons moved in around the same time we did, but they haven't gotten any notices. They play golf with Fleming every Sunday." Lily's face hardened. "So it's personal." "Seems that way." Michael ran a hand over his face. "But I don't understand why. We barely know the guy." That Saturday, while Michael was washing his car in the driveway, he noticed Fleming walking the neighborhood with a clipboard and camera. The HOA president stopped across the street, taking photos of the Rodriguez family's house. From what Michael could see, their only crime was a basketball hoop that their teenage son used daily. Michael dried his hands and walked over. "Everything okay over here?" Mrs. Rodriguez, a nurse who often worked night shifts, looked exhausted and on the verge of tears. "Mr. Fleming says we need to remove Diego's basketball hoop by tomorrow or face a $100 fine. But it was here when we bought the house." Fleming's face reddened. "The previous owners never got proper approval. Rules are rules." "The hoop's been there for 7 years," Mrs. Rodriguez said. "Why is it suddenly a problem now?" Fleming ignored her, scribbling something on his clipboard. "The fine doubles every day it remains up." Michael stepped forward. "Can I see where this rule is in the HOA bylaws?" Fleming's eyes narrowed. "I don't have to show you anything, Reynolds. Mind your own business." "We're neighbors helping neighbors. That is my business." Michael kept his voice level despite the anger simmering beneath the surface. His years of handling high-pressure situations had taught him that showing emotion often made things worse. "You military types think you're so special," Fleming spat out. "Think the rules don't apply to you." And there it was, the first hint of what was really going on. Michael filed that information away as Fleming stormed off, promising to return with enforcement. "Thank you," Mrs. Rodriguez said quietly. "But now he'll probably target you even more." Michael shrugged. "I've faced worse." He pulled out his phone. "Can I get your number? I'm thinking we should start a neighborhood group chat." By the end of the week, Michael had connected with 6 families who were being harassed by Fleming. They began sharing stories and documenting incidents. A pattern emerged. Fleming seemed to particularly dislike families with military backgrounds, young children, or cultural differences from his own. One morning, Michael found Fleming in their front yard taking photos of their children's bikes, which had been left on the porch overnight. "You're trespassing on private property," Michael said calmly, stepping outside. Fleming sneered. "HOA rules give me the right to document violations." "From the sidewalk, not on my lawn." "And you're photographing my children's belongings without permission." Something about Fleming's expression made the hair on Michael's neck stand up, the same feeling he'd had on patrol when something wasn't right. The man's eyes had a disturbing gleam, his hands shaking slightly as he clutched his camera. "You people are ruining this neighborhood," Fleming hissed. "I built this community, and I won't let it go downhill because of families like yours." As Fleming stormed away, Michael pulled out his phone and added this encounter to his growing file. His military training had taught him to trust his instincts, and right now, they were screaming that Fleming was more than just an annoying neighbor, he was escalating towards something dangerous. Sunday afternoon arrived with perfect spring weather. Michael had promised the kids they could set up the sprinkler in the backyard, and their excited shrieks of laughter as they ran through the water made the day feel almost normal. Lily sat on the patio reading a book, occasionally glancing up to smile at their antics. "Dad, come play with us," Katie called, her hair plastered to her face and her clothes soaked through. Michael was about to join them when Lily stood suddenly, her book falling to the ground. "Michael," she said quietly, "look who's here." Fleming stood at their back gate, watching the children with a look of disgust. Without waiting for an invitation, he unlatched the gate and marched into their yard. "What's going on here?" Michael asked, moving to stand between Fleming and his family. "Another violation," Fleming said, waving a piece of paper. "Excessive water usage and noise disturbance." "It's Sunday afternoon and my kids are playing in our own backyard," Michael said. "There's no noise ordinance being broken here." Lily had quietly ushered the children onto the patio, wrapping them in towels. Ben looked confused, while Katie pressed against her mother's side. "The HOA bylaws clearly state that water features must be approved by the board," Fleming insisted. "A children's sprinkler isn't a water feature," Michael replied, keeping his voice level despite his growing frustration. "It's a toy." Fleming's face reddened. "I'm tired of your constant disregard for the rules. This neighborhood was peaceful before troublemakers like you moved in." Lily stepped forward. "Mr. Fleming, I understand you take pride in this community." "We do too. That's why we moved here. But there's no need to speak to my husband that way in front of our children." Something in Fleming snapped. "Don't tell me what to do in my own neighborhood, lady," he shouted, causing Katie to burst into tears. "That's enough," Michael said firmly. "You need to leave our property now." "Or what? You'll use your fancy military moves on me?" Fleming sneered. "I'm not afraid of you." "Nobody's threatening you," Michael said. "But you're trespassing and upsetting my family." "I'll show you upsetting," Fleming muttered, turning and stomping back toward the gate. Michael thought that would be the end of it, an unpleasant exchange but nothing more. He was wrong. As Michael comforted his children, trying to salvage what remained of their fun afternoon, a car door slammed out front. Seconds later, Fleming reappeared at the gate, but this time something was different. His right hand was partially hidden behind his back. "Fleming," Michael said, instantly alert to the change in the man's posture. "What are you doing?" With a jerky motion, Fleming pulled his hand forward, revealing a small black handgun. The afternoon sun glinted off the metal as he pointed it directly at Lily and the children. "I told you people to follow the rules," Fleming said, his voice eerily calm compared to his earlier outburst. His hand trembled slightly. "Nobody listens. Nobody respects what I've built here." Time seemed to slow down. Michael saw his wife's face drain of color, her arms instinctively tightening around their children. He saw the tremor in Fleming's hand, the wild look in his eyes that suggested a man who had completely lost control. In that moment, 15 years of military training crystallized into absolute clarity. This wasn't a battlefield in a foreign country. This was his backyard, his family in the crosshairs of an unstable man with a weapon. But the principles were the same: assess the threat, protect the innocent, neutralize the danger. Michael raised his hands slowly. "Thomas," he said, using Fleming's first name deliberately. "Let's talk about this. Put the gun down before someone gets hurt." "Shut up. Just shut up," Fleming shouted. "I'm sick of you acting like you own this place." "I'm in charge here." "Me." As Fleming's attention focused on Michael, Lily began inching the children toward the patio door. Fleming noticed the movement and swung the gun back toward them. "Nobody's going anywhere," he screamed. Michael knew he had seconds to act before the situation spiraled completely out of control. With the precision that had kept him alive in combat zones, he began implementing a strategy, not one of violence, but one that would save his family and possibly even the man who was threatening them. Michael's military training had taught him that in crisis situations, the first few seconds determine everything. He needed to be the calmest person in the chaos. Time seemed to slow as he assessed his options, just as he had done countless times during his service. "Thomas," Michael said again, his voice even lower and steadier than before. "Look at what you're doing. You're pointing a gun at children. This isn't who you want to be." Fleming's eyes darted between Michael and his family, the gun still aimed their way, but his hand visibly shaking now. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the mild temperature. "They need to learn respect," Fleming muttered, but there was a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. Michael saw his opening. "Lily," he said without looking away from Fleming, "take the kids inside." Call the Patels next door. Tell them what's happening. They're not going anywhere, Fleming shouted, waving the gun. Thomas, this is between you and me, Michael continued, taking a small step to the side, drawing Fleming's attention away from his family. Let's talk man to man. Just us. As Michael had hoped, Fleming's focus shifted to him. Lily seized the moment, pulling both children through the patio door in one swift movement. Fleming realized too late what had happened. No, he yelled, starting toward the house. They're calling the police right now, Michael said, positioning himself in Fleming's path. Think about what happens next. Police arrive. They see a man with a gun. How do you think that ends, Thomas? Fleming's face contorted with rage and fear. This is your fault. You people ruined everything. Put the gun down and walk away, Michael said. Right now, this is just a mistake. Nobody's hurt. We can fix this. While maintaining eye contact with Fleming, Michael slowly reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. With practiced movements from his military days, he pressed the emergency button and speaker function without looking. 911, what's your emergency? A voice suddenly called out from the phone. Fleming's eyes widened in panic. This is Michael Reynolds at 1487 Oakwood Drive, Michael said clearly. There's an armed man in my backyard threatening my family. He's Thomas Fleming, the HOA president. I'm a former Marine trying to de-escalate, but I need immediate assistance. Units are being dispatched now, sir. Are you in a safe location? The dispatcher asked. My family is secure inside. I'm still with Mr. Fleming in the backyard. He appears distressed and is armed with what looks like a 9mm handgun. The professional tone and precise details seemed to shock Fleming, who looked down at the gun in his hand as if seeing it for the first time. I wasn't really going to, Fleming stammered. I know, Michael said, his voice softer now. This got out of hand, but we can end it right now. Put the gun on the ground, Thomas. From inside the house, Michael could hear Lily's hushed voice on another phone. Through the kitchen window, he glimpsed movement next door, Mr. Patel peering over the fence, then quickly ducking back down. The neighborhood was mobilizing. Fleming must have noticed too. His shoulders slumped. They'll arrest me. Yes, Michael acknowledged honestly. But you haven't hurt anyone yet. That matters. I just wanted people to follow the rules, Fleming mumbled, his voice breaking. I understand caring about your neighborhood, Michael said. But this isn't the way. In the distance, sirens wailed. Fleming looked toward the sound, then back at Michael. They're coming fast, Michael noted. Make the right choice, Thomas. Put the gun down now, and I'll tell them you were cooperating when they arrive. With trembling hands, Fleming slowly lowered the weapon. That's good, Michael encouraged. Now place it on the ground and step back. As Fleming bent to set the gun down, Michael remained alert. His training had taught him that the moment of surrender could sometimes be the most dangerous. Now take 5 steps back, Michael instructed, just as he'd been taught to handle weapon surrenders in combat zones. Fleming complied, walking backward across the lawn with his hands raised. Only then did Michael move forward, keeping his eyes on Fleming while retrieving the gun. With practiced movements, he removed the magazine and cleared the chamber. The sirens grew louder. Through the fence, Michael could now see several neighbors gathering in the street out front. His military training had given him more than combat skills. It had taught him how to remain calm in chaos, how to protect others, and how to defuse a situation without violence when possible. 3 police cars pulled up in front of the house, lights flashing. Michael stood calmly in the yard, Fleming's unloaded gun carefully placed on the ground several feet away from both of them. Fleming sat on the grass, his head in his hands. Hands where we can see them. An officer called as 4 police officers entered the backyard with guns drawn. Michael raised his hands immediately. I'm Michael Reynolds, homeowner. I made the call. The weapon is secure, magazine removed and chamber cleared. This man is Thomas Fleming. The lead officer, a woman with short gray hair and steady eyes, noted Michael's calm demeanor and precise language. Military? She asked as her partners moved to handcuff Fleming. Marines. 15 years, Michael confirmed. Appreciate your handling of the situation, sir, she said, holstering her weapon after checking Fleming's gun. We'll need statements from everyone. The next few hours passed in a blur. The police took Fleming away. Neighbors gathered at the edge of the property, whispering among themselves. Officers photographed the scene and collected statements. Through it all, Michael kept his focus on his family. Katie hadn't stopped trembling, and Ben had gone completely silent, a reaction Michael recognized from his own combat experiences. "The kids need to talk to someone about this," Michael told Lily that evening after the police finally left. "This isn't something they should just get over." Lily nodded, exhaustion lining her face. "I know. I'd already called Dr. Wilson at the family center. She can see them tomorrow." Michael pulled her into a hug, feeling her tears soak through his shirt. "We're okay," he whispered. "Everyone's safe." "Because of you," she said. "If you hadn't been so calm." "Hey," he said, lifting her chin gently. "You got the kids inside. You called for help. We did this together." The following morning, Detective Rivera arrived with more questions and surprising information. "We searched Fleming's house," she explained, sitting at their kitchen table while the kids played quietly in another room. "Found financial records for the HOA that show some serious problems." "What kind of problems?" Michael asked. "About $80,000 missing over 3 years," Rivera said. "And it looks like he was falsifying violation reports to collect extra fines that never made it to the HOA account." Lily's eyes widened. "He was stealing from the neighborhood." "Appears that way," Rivera confirmed. "We also found notes about certain homeowners he considered problems. Your family was at the top of the list, along with 5 others, mostly newcomers asking questions about HOA finances." Michael thought back to all the harassment, the constant violations. He was targeting people who might discover what he was doing. "That's our theory," Rivera agreed. "And something else. The gun wasn't registered. Fleming has a felony conviction from 20 years ago for embezzlement. He can't legally own firearms." "So that's why he panicked when I mentioned the police," Michael said, pieces falling into place. "Exactly. One more thing," Rivera added. "We found dozens of folders with photos of houses, yards, children playing, surveillance he'd been conducting on the neighborhood." Michael felt a chill run through him. The situation had been even more dangerous than he realized. That afternoon, there was a knock at their door. Michael opened it to find Mr. Patel and Mrs. Rodriguez standing there with about 15 other neighbors. "We wanted to check on your family," Mrs. Rodriguez said. "And to thank you." "For what?" Michael asked. Standing up to him, Mr. Patel explained. "Many of us were afraid to, and we never knew about the missing money." One by one, neighbors shared stories of Fleming's harassment, threats, bizarre rules, personal vendettas. Some had lived with his behavior for years, too intimidated to speak up. "What happens now?" someone asked. "With the HOA, I mean." "Emergency board meeting tonight," an older man said. "I'm the vice president. We need to elect a new president and figure out what's left of our finances." Everyone turned to look at Michael. "Oh no," he said, raising his hands. "I'm not looking to take over anything." "We don't need someone to take over," Mrs. Rodriguez said. "We need someone who knows how to bring people together, how to stay calm under pressure, how to get things done the right way." "At least come to the meeting," Mr. Patel urged. "Help us figure out a path forward." Michael looked at Lily, who gave him a small nod. "Okay," he said. "I'll be there." Later, as Michael sat at his laptop preparing for the meeting, he pulled up the documents he'd been methodically collecting since the troubles began: dates, times, photographs, copies of violation notices, neighborhood bylaws. His military training had taught him the value of documentation, of building a case piece by piece. He hadn't known then how crucial that information would become. Now, it would help rebuild the community on stronger foundations. The community center buzzed with voices as Michael walked in that evening. Nearly every household in Oak Ridge Estates had shown up, filling the small meeting room to capacity. Conversations stopped as he entered, and several people nodded respectfully in his direction. The vice president, an older man named Frank, who had lived in the neighborhood since it was built, called the meeting to order. "We've got a lot to sort through tonight," he began, his voice shaky. "The police have confirmed that Thomas Fleming misused HOA funds and created false violations to collect personal fines." Angry murmurs rippled through the crowd. "How much is left in our accounts?" someone called out. Frank looked down at his papers. After initial review, it appears we have about $12,000 remaining. Fleming spent most of our reserve fund. What about the pool repairs we voted on last year? A woman asked. Fleming said that money was set aside. There's no record of it, Frank admitted. We need to go through all the paperwork to figure out what's real and what isn't. The room erupted in frustrated voices. Some people blamed the other board members for not catching the theft. Others worried about property values dropping once news of the scandal spread. A few suggested disbanding the HOA altogether. Michael sat quietly, watching the chaos unfold. It reminded him of village meetings he'd attended overseas, people scared and angry, looking for someone to blame, struggling to find a path forward. Frank tried unsuccessfully to restore order, his gavel drowned out by the noise. After several minutes, he looked directly at Michael. Mr. Reynolds, would you mind saying a few words? People seem to respect you after what happened. Michael hadn't planned to speak, but he understood what was needed. He stood and walked to the front of the room. He didn't raise his voice, but something in his posture made people gradually quiet down. I'm new here, he began simply. I moved my family to Oak Ridge because it seemed like a good place to put down roots after my time in the service. Yesterday, I had a man point a gun at my wife and children in our own backyard. The room went completely silent. That's not the community any of us want to live in. Fleming betrayed everyone's trust, but that doesn't mean we need to turn on each other now. Michael pulled out his laptop and connected it to the projector. In the military, we have a saying, proper planning prevents poor performance. When things went wrong with Fleming, I started keeping records. I've put together a simple plan that might help us move forward. On the screen appeared a clear, step-by-step outline with 3 main sections: immediate actions, short-term goals, and long-term vision. First, we need a complete financial audit, Michael explained, pointing to the screen. We need to know exactly what we have and what we owe. I've spoken with Mrs. Chen, who's a certified accountant. She's volunteered to lead a committee to review all records. Mrs. Chen stood up from her seat. I've already contacted 2 colleagues who will help pro bono. We can have preliminary findings in a week. Michael continued through his plan. Second, we need to revise the HOA bylaws to prevent one person from having too much power. I've drafted some suggestions based on models from successful communities. He clicked to show a simple organizational chart. Third, we need transparent communication, no more secret meetings or surprise violations. Everything should be posted online where everyone can see it. As Michael walked through each point, the mood in the room began to shift. People started offering suggestions, volunteering for committees, building on ideas. Mr. Rodriguez, who worked in 8, offered to create a neighborhood website. The Patels volunteered their garage for storing HOA records during the audit. A retired lawyer suggested revisions to strengthen the bylaws. This is exactly what we need, Frank said, looking relieved. Organization, transparency, cooperation. In the Marines, we learned that the best way through a crisis is together, Michael said. Everyone has something to contribute. By the end of the evening, 5 committees had formed, each with clear tasks and deadlines. People exchanged phone numbers and made plans to meet. The tension that had filled the room earlier had transformed into purposeful energy. As Michael was packing up his laptop, Mrs. Rodriguez approached him. My brother was in the army, she said. He always told me that military training shows up in unexpected ways in civilian life. I see what he meant now. Michael smiled. It's just about having a system, breaking big problems into manageable parts. Well, whatever you call it, it worked, she replied. Fleming spent years keeping us divided and afraid. In one night, you've gotten us working together. Walking home under the streetlights, Michael felt something he hadn't expected, a sense of belonging. The neighborhood that had seemed so perfect from the outside was flawed in many ways. But maybe, he thought, that's what made it real. And maybe his family's difficult experience would ultimately help build something stronger than what had existed before. 6 months had passed since that terrifying Sunday afternoon when Fleming had pointed a gun at Michael's family. The neighborhood had changed in ways no one could have predicted. Michael stood in his driveway, watching Ben practice basketball with the Rodriguez boy. The same basketball hoop that had once been labeled a violation was now the center of a weekly neighborhood youth league that Michael helped coach. Kids from 12 families participated, with parents taking turns bringing snacks and keeping score. Think we'll win the big game tomorrow? Mr. Rodriguez asked, walking over with 2 cold drinks. He handed one to Michael. The kids are looking good, Michael replied with a smile. But Coach Chen's team has been practicing hard too. A car pulled into the driveway next door, and Mrs. Patel waved as she unloaded groceries. Michael, the newsletter committee approved the final draft. Want to see it? The Oak Ridge Monthly, as they called it, had been Mrs. Patel's idea. A simple update on neighborhood happenings, committee reports, and upcoming events. This month's edition featured photos from the community garden they'd planted in the previously unused lot at the end of the street. I'll stop by after dinner, Michael promised. Inside, he found Lily helping Katie with a poster for the neighborhood's first annual summer festival. Construction paper and markers covered the kitchen table. How's it going in here? He asked, kissing the top of Katie's head. We're making signs for all the booths, Katie explained excitedly. Mom says I can help at the face painting station. Lily looked up with a smile that reached her eyes, something that had taken months to return after the incident. The final schedule came in. 26 families signed up to help. Can you believe it? Michael couldn't, not really. The transformation had been remarkable. What had once been a collection of isolated households, each afraid of getting on Fleming's bad side, had become a true community. The doorbell rang. Frank, the former vice president who now served as treasurer, waited on the porch with a folder. The audit committee finished the quarterly report, he said, handing Michael the folder. Everything balances. Chen did a fantastic job setting up the new system. Michael glanced through the simple, clear charts showing income from dues, expenses for maintenance, and the slowly rebuilding reserve fund. Perfect timing. We can present this at tomorrow's meeting. Oh, and the court date is set, Frank added. Prosecutor says they have an airtight case. Between the financial records and what he did to your family. Michael nodded. Fleming's trial had been delayed by psychiatric evaluations and legal maneuvering. The former HOA president now faced multiple felony charges: assault with a deadly weapon, embezzlement, illegal possession of a firearm, and a dozen other counts. How are the kids doing with all that? Frank asked quietly. Better, Michael said. The counseling has helped. Katie still has nightmares sometimes, but they're less frequent. Ben's working through it in his own way. That war strategy game he designed for his school project was pretty revealing. Frank chuckled. Future military man like his dad? Maybe. Or maybe he'll be an engineer. He's got a good mind for solving problems. Later that evening, after the kids were in bed, Michael and Lily sat on their back porch swing. The same backyard where they'd faced terror now felt peaceful again. String lights hum from the trees, a suggestion from the newly formed landscaping committee that had replaced Fleming's strict rules with friendly recommendations. Did you see the invitation from the Wilsons? Lily asked, leaning against his shoulder. They're hosting a welcome dinner for the new family moving in next week. That's the 4th new family this year, Michael noted. Word's getting around that Oak Ridge is a good place to live. Lowry squeezed his hand. Because of you. Michael shook his head. Not me. All of us. Everyone pitched in. But it started with you, she insisted. The way you handled Fleming. The way you organized everything afterward. Your military training. The military taught me a lot, Michael admitted. How to stay calm under pressure. How to plan. How to lead. But most importantly, it taught me that the strength of any unit comes from people working together, trusting each other. In the distance, they could hear laughter from the Chen house, where the events committee was finalizing plans for tomorrow's festival. Children's bicycles stood in driveways, no longer violations but signs of a neighborhood alive with families. Front porches had rocking chairs and hanging plants, where once there had been only Fleming's strict conformity. Remember when you were hesitant about moving here? Lily asked. You said civilian life might be too quiet after the Marines. Michael laughed softly. Not exactly how I expected to use my training. Facing down an armed HOA president wasn't in the brochure. No, Lily agreed, growing serious. But I'm thankful every day that you knew what to do when it happened. Michael looked out over their yard, their street, their community. What had started as a terrifying confrontation had somehow transformed into something unexpected, a chance to build something meaningful, to turn fear into strength, isolation into connection. He said simply, watching the fireflies begin to appear in the gathering dusk. Worth fighting for.